Ever wanted a fucking airplane? Well, after playing this game, the answer might be yes. Kamikaze Lassplanes is a hybrid visual novel and side-scrolling shoot-'em-up developed and self-published by Polish indie studio Inky Dreams. Full disclosure, they did reach out to me and provided me with a pre-release copy of the game at no cost. That will not affect the content of this review at all, but it is something you should be aware of. The game releases for PC and Switch on August 30, 2024, which should be today assuming I got the video done in time, and by the time this video is out, there will also be a free demo out, so you can play the first chapter for free and see if it interests you. Kamikaze Lassplanes is a gas lamp fantasy story, which is basically when you have a world where the setting-defining technology runs on magic, and is set in a small kingdom that has attained technological superiority due to their discovery and monopoly of a magical power source known as the Light. In addition to general industrialization, the kingdom has also established a robust defense system known as the Veil, which has allowed them to continue to develop without fear of foreign attack. The main character of the story is Walter, an ace military pilot selected to use the kingdom's other major military asset, the titular Lassplanes, humans who, through the power of the Light, have been given the ability to transform into devastatingly effective fighter planes via a magical girl-style transformation sequence. His assigned Lassplane is Alba, though he does also meet Hannah shortly into the story. Main conflict is that the Empire has found a way to break through the Veil and send limited pilots over to cause trouble. Aesthetically, I do like this game. The visuals are clean and vibrant, with the traditional visual novel style of sprites on a background alongside occasional CGs. The sprites do utilize a light live D2D animation that I think is done reasonably well. I'm not the biggest fan of live 2D in general, but I do think that this game does a decent job of it and manages to avoid a lot of the robotic feel I often get from this style of animation. This game does not contain any 18+ content, though there are a number of nods to the ecchi side of the industry, and it definitely does not shy away from the occasional bit of fan service. The music it's okay. I liked it, I think it served its purpose as part of the experience, but none of it stuck with me and none of it gave me any real desire to seek it out outside the game. Normally I would be playing it in the background for you, but this game did not play nice when I tried to extract the audio files, and as the game wasn't out at the time of making this video, the soundtrack was unavailable to me. So you'll just have to take my word for it. Okay, so at the start of the video, I described Kamikaze Lassplanes as a hybrid, but it's more accurate to say that it's a visual novel broken up by shmup gameplay segments. While the gameplay is probably going to be what catches your eye, you should be aware that the majority of your time will be spent on story. The game is broken up into 6 chapters, with each one containing a shooting segment. The basics of the gameplay are very simple. You've got your basic movement and attack, a special attack that charges up as you deal damage, and that's pretty much it for the most part. A few levels do have gimmick mechanics, but it's a basic shmup at its core. Your Lassplane starts on the left and fires right at the enemies. Enemies deal contact damage and will fire 2 types of projectiles at you. Yellow projectiles can be interrupted with your own attacks. This will delete both your bullet and theirs. Purple projectiles generally must be avoided, though special attacks and some power-ups can actually get rid of them. Some levels will also contain hazards that need to be avoided or destroyed via a special attack, and the aim of the game is simple. Kill them, don't die. Slain enemies have a chance to drop power-ups. A pretty big chance, in fact. You'll be swimming in these things. The available power-ups are, and I'm making up the names of these things because I don't think there's any in-game name for them, gun upgrades, which will power up your basic attack with the max power changing depending on what level you're on. You'll lose one whenever you're hit, but you can pick it right back up. Shields will make you invulnerable for a surprisingly long time. Batteries will instantly fill up your special attack. Missiles will summon 2 high-powered homing projectiles. Targets will temporarily make all your shots homing. Attack buffs will temporarily hypercharge your attack speed. Flowers will fire off bullets in all directions that deal a solid amount of damage and can destroy purple projectiles. Health packs heal you to full. And drones will summon a drone that'll occasionally fire off an extra bullet, but will go away if you get hit at all. So there's already going to be a lot of shit going on with the hectic nature of shmups in general, and the power-up spam of this game in particular, but there's one more level to it. And of course, that's the special attacks. As you deal damage and get kills, your special meter will fill. Once it's full, and note that you can't overcharge, once you're full any extra is wasted, you can unleash a special attack, draining that bar to 0. The main difference between the 2 Lassplanes is this special attack. Alba has a big horizontal laser that'll fuck up pretty much anything directly in front of her for a few seconds, and she'll be invulnerable for the duration. Hannah has a rocket barrage that deals heavy damage and can destroy purple projectiles. Most of the time this will basically wipe the screen of any grunts, though it's not a guarantee since sometimes there are blocking hazards that can soak up a ton of damage. Both of these special attacks are extremely powerful. In fact, I'd say they're probably a bit below Toho bombs in terms of raw usefulness, which is interesting considering you'll be using them all the fucking time. Seriously, that charge is pretty fast and it absolutely tears through the enemies. It actually took me some getting used to. I'm not the biggest shmup gamer out there. In fact, most of my experience was gained while I was making that Toho video a few years back. Safe to say, I've been conditioned to avoid using the button that makes the entire screen go boom until I absolutely need it. But that ain't exactly the strat when that bar is going to charge up 20 plus times and there's no downside to using it. But once I did figure it out, I started having a lot more fun with the game and everything became high-octane destruction. The game also has a scoring system. Each level will track your score and you can get a ranking of up to 3 gears depending on how many points you get. As far as I can tell, these rankings don't actually do anything. As long as you complete the level at all, you move on and the story remains unchanged, and at least on Steam there aren't any associated achievements. So I'm pretty sure it's just a benchmark for players who want to challenge themselves. And you can immediately retry shooting segments after you complete them if you want, so there's that. The way points work is that each enemy is worth a certain amount of points, but you also have a multiplier on the bottom left. It starts out at 1, and each time an enemy dies, it goes up by 1, capping out at 10. Pretty simple stuff. So the idea is to not take any hits and to not let enemies escape if at all possible. One thing I did notice, and I honestly can't say if it's good or bad, is that the invincibility window after getting hit is a lot smaller than you'd think. In most shoot-em-ups, you generally have a bit of time to maneuver and reposition a bit after getting hit, but in Kamikaze Lassplanes, you pretty much only have enough time to immediately move out of the way. No zipping through hazards to grab the gun upgrade you just dropped, you are getting to safety and waiting until you can get through the normal way. This definitely took some adjustment from me, and there were plenty of times in my playthrough that I took 2, 3, 4 hits because I either pushed my luck or hesitated for just a second or two. It could be frustrating at times, but not enough to seriously dampen my enjoyment of the game. Nearly every stage also capped off with a boss fight, and without exception, I enjoyed them. They all brought something new to the table, and just aesthetically, it's cool to see these steampunk behemoths coming at you. By now, you'll have seen at least 1 or 2 of them in the background of this video. And one more thing is that Kamikaze Lassplanes also features an arcade mode. This one will have you pick a last plane and go through a gauntlet of combat encounters styled after the different levels you'd play in the story mode, with all the actual story content stripped out. Additionally, there are a few tweaks to some of the mechanics. For starters, the multiplier cap has been increased from times 10 to times 99, meaning scoring potential goes way up. Additionally, instead of a checkpoint system like in the main story, you have limited lives, though you gain an extra life every 10 million points, encouraging you to keep that score up. Health pickups are also disabled, though you do get healed in between levels. And there are also 7 bonus drones scattered throughout the experience. Destroy them all for an achievement and a bonus CG. If you like the gameplay of Kamikaze Lassplanes, this is basically more of that. Though I will say that I think the arcade mode is a bit on the easy and short side. I do think this game would have benefited from a true endless mode. Once you've conquered arcade on the highest difficulty, the amount of replayability from a gameplay perspective is pretty limited. So overall, the shooting segments, and for the record I played on the normal difficulty, were pretty fun, reasonably challenging at times, and I did enjoy myself. That being said, despite the surprisingly strong ludonarrative harmony, like seriously, the gameplay lines up with canon better than most. But despite that, it does make it harder to be in the right mood for this game. For me, my desire to read a visual novel and my desire to play a game that requires heavy input and twitch reactions are 2 completely different parts of my brain, and it can be a little jarring to go from 45 minutes of reading to 15 minutes of shmup and then back to more reading. I definitely had a good time, but it left me feeling a bit weird. Good, but a bit weird. And of course, it wouldn't be an ads video without talking writing. Kamikaze Lassplanes has a dynamic story with 8 possible endings. Full disclosure, at the time of making this video, I got 3 of them. 1 good, 2 bad. Sorry, but there just wasn't enough time for me to get them all and still have this video done on time. To be clear, it's not like there are 8 different routes to this game. The story will follow the same major beats each time, with most of the differences being dialogue tweaks and a couple of alternate scenes like spending time with Alba instead of Hannah, or vice versa. It's also worth noting that not every ending actually takes you through the entire story. I know for a fact that at least one of them is a wrong choice, you're dead now ending. The one annoying thing is that you do have to go through the gameplay segments even if you're just trying to grind out endings, though that can be somewhat reduced with a bit of well-timed save scumming. Unless I completely missed it, there's no skipping the gameplay segments, which do not change by the way, so there's nothing new to be gained by replaying them. Even if you choose story difficulty, that just makes you unkillable. It doesn't actually bypass the gameplay in any way. So that does unfortunately pad the playtime in a way that can be somewhat frustrating. I am interested in getting the remaining 5 endings on my own time, but I hope that being forced to replay all these levels so many times doesn't burn me out before I can get them. The story itself starts out in a deceptively storybook manner, though it does house a darker undertone. As I said way back in the video, main character Walter was selected to be a Lassplane pilot and was paired up with Alba. Not long into the story, they run into some Empire ships and that kinda kicks off the conflict. Walter then meets Hannah and the three all kinda start sticking together. It's going to be hard to really explain all that much without spoiling things because a lot of what the story is trying to do hinges on the things that are hidden to the reader and the questions they'll naturally start asking. Questions like, what is the light? Why are the Empire attacking? What's wrong with the Veil? Why are these things not adding up? What don't these people know? What I will say is that things are not as black and white as they first appear, and there is a point where you'll get seriously info dumped on, and like 85% of everything will start making sense. I'll also say that while I remained ignorant of the details of what was to be revealed later in the story, I did find the general trajectory of the narrative to be fairly predictable. There were minor twists that didn't surprise me, and in the big climactic reveal sequence, I definitely got the sense that I didn't know what exactly I was about to learn, but I did know what kind of thing I was about to learn. Again, it's hard to explain without spoilers, but I've seen this kind of story structure before, and while I think the execution was decent, it did feel very familiar to me. Where I think the visual novel deserves praise is the characters of Alba and Hannah. Honorable mention to Walter. Even though he isn't as good, I appreciate that they had a main character with an actual personality, rather than the one-note self-inserts that you often find in visual novels. But seriously, I was impressed with the Lassplanes. There wasn't a whole lot of runtime to work with. Again, I got 3 endings plus a run of arcade mode, and that took me 5.5 hours. Granted, I am a very fast reader, but it's still not a long story. But even without all that much wiggle room, they managed to make the girls have layered personalities with interesting things going on, some of which are pretty immediately apparent and some of which do tie into major themes of the story. A big contributing factor to how these girls interface with the world is the fact that they are Lassplanes, have been training as such from an early age, and are basically government property in all but name. But it's also considered a huge honor, and they're treated like celebrities and war heroes even in the absence of an actual war. Alba is bubbly and energetic, with just a touch of naivete to go along with it. She has a deep love for her country and the family she left behind to become a Lassplane. She does start out a little simpler than I would have liked, but her character actually synergizes really well with the plot because once certain things become known to the player that I can't spoil here, that almost childlike attitude sets up an amazing series of oh fuck moments that wouldn't have been possible with a less positive character. And Hannah is kind of a mischievous little shit. She likes to tease Walter and definitely has a coup de light personality. She's also very clearly a lot more pessimistic and rebellious than Alba. Additionally, as a seasoned veteran compared to Alba's relatively rookie status, she has much more experience with everything going on in the kingdom and the military, and her history does hold the key to a lot of these questions you have, and I found her to be a great and nuanced character start to finish. Again, can't spoil things so I can't really explain fully, but I liked her. You do start out the game focusing on Walter and Alba, so I was a little concerned that she would fall to the wayside a bit, but I am happily wrong on that one, and in fact, I think I like her more than Alba, all things considered. So is this the best story I've ever experienced? No, and if you're going in expecting this huge epic experience that'll change your life, you're going to be disappointed. But the story is not bad by any stretch, and even if I wasn't making a video on it, I'd have been glad to have experienced it. My biggest complaint is honestly that the pacing is a little off, and I think that's largely down to the runtime. There are 2 heroines and a pervasive plotline that have to be included in 6 relatively short chapters. That's not a whole lot of room to give the story the space that I feel it really needed, and there was one chapter in particular that was just a big ol' info dump. So I do feel like if the story was given a bit more breathing room, that might have been helpful, but overall it wasn't bad. I liked it, and if the concept interests you at all, you'll probably like it too. So overall, what do I think? At the time of making this video, the game isn't out yet, so I don't actually know what the price point will be. But what we have here is a fairly short but fun experience that's a bit deeper than it initially seems, with shmup gameplay segments that are certainly fun and chaotic but do tend to lack a bit in replayability. The story is good, though it left me wishing for a bit more. Again, I don't know what this is going to sell for, but I'd say I'd probably be willing to spend around $15 on this title. Of course, I would recommend playing the demo because you may well feel different than me. So back when standard game reviews were a more regular thing on this channel, I wouldn't rate games on a numerical scale, but instead whether it was worth a purchase. In this instance, depending on what the actual price is, I'd say it's probably going to be wait for a sale, though it's worth snapping up as soon as it does go on sale. You'll probably have a good time with it. Thanks for watching. Big thank you to my members, especially my $10 member, Bulk Squat Thrust. And of course, thank you to Patricia over at Inky Dreams for hooking me up with a copy of the game. I've got another video coming out very soon. I've actually paused editing on that video to get this one done, so it's pretty close to being finished. Once again, thank you all for watching. Check out Kamikaze Lassplanes if you're interested, and I'll see you next time. Play the electro swing.
Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more.